Can you tell us the significance of inaugural ceremonies for the President?
The important thing about inaugurations is that you are having a peaceful, harmonious, and even joyful turnover. No violence, no hassle, no quarrels, no differences of opinion on that particular day.
Even if both presidents don't get along?
Yes, because after all, it is the well-being, security, and eventual success of the nation itself that is involved.
We always often talk about the inaugural of the President. What happens with the Vice President?
There was always just one inaugural, and the Vice President, even if he or she came from another party. I do remember the incoming Vice President during my own inaugural. Vice President Erap Estrada was from another party, but he was present at the Quirino Grandstand, somewhere there in the front row. Because the message we must show is harmony. One Philippine team, regardless of political affiliations.
Can you walk us through your inauguration? Let's go back to 1992.
I called on President Cory Aquino at Malacanang. I was received very nicely. I was asked to sign the guest book, which was my first official entry into Malacanang as President-elect. I was taken to the music room, and we had a friendly chat for about half an hour. She was very modest. It's very typical of her, which made her a great president.
What was the most unforgettable aspect of the inauguration?
It was back to work. Right after the Quirino Grandstand ceremony, we went to Malacanang, plus some guests, including members of the diplomatic corps, for lunch. I ordered that we should have our first cabinet meeting. In the evening was the reception there in the PICC.
What were the emotions like? Was there a more challenge? Was there a little fear of not succeeding? Was there joy? I mean, what was the overwhelming feeling coming into the presidency? What does it feel like to be president?
In my case, I was fairly comfortable going into the presidency because I came from the cabinet of a, I would say, successful president. And before that, being in the military, I had gone all around the country, met all kinds of people, and dealt with all kinds of peace and order and security problems.
There's been a lot of achievements of FVR that's been said, especially during a time, I think, sir, that was the time of the financial crisis as well. But what would you say would be your biggest achievement as president?
I still consider building the One Philippine team as my best achievement. Presidents, just like family heads, must always build on the gains of his or her predecessor. Meaning, a president must succeed better than his or her predecessor, or that a president must never go back to square one.
Did you feel you were able to do that from the Cory administration?
Largely, but we had some failures, like for instance, in the sense of completely eliminating poverty. I think that was too ambitious a goal to be done for 6 years. It may take even more than one generation. But what we did, and it's still there, is to put in the macro, socio-economic fundamentals.
What were the other failures, you would say, aside from, well, completely eliminating poverty?
The carrying out of the 1996 final peace agreement. at the lower levels, meaning even if we crafted what may be seen as an agreement made in heaven, because it was very, very inclusive. Failures at the lower levels, at the level of the armed forces, at the level of the national police, at the level of the local government officials, derailed the process.
How would you want people to remember FVR? What is the legacy you think that you left behind, or what is the most important thing people should remember about you or your presidency?
It is just to be a good teacher by developing good students to learn some good lessons. When there are problems, well, you juggle them, don't drop any. And then at the right time, you toss one to the next guy to solve. But you yourself must not fall off or fall down or collapse.
Weren't you the most traveled president?
I was the most traveled up to my time.
Till now.
Oh, I think some have traveled more than I have. The justification for my, I think 79 foreign visits were recorded in 6 years. Oh, that's roughly 12 a year or once a month, which is often enough. I said this was always done for a purpose, principally to connect so that we could have more trade for the benefit of the Philippines.
You seem to really found fulfillment, enjoyment in the presidency. I wanted to ask you, going back to 1992 and looking at 2016 now, which era would you have wanted to be president?
Frankly, 2016 is a less fearful period for me. Because, number one, and you cannot argue this point, I am much older now, and therefore more experienced. And I pride myself in the fact that the incoming president happens to be a close acquaintance of mine. In fact, if he will confirm it, I can even say that we are good friends. Secondly, some of his cabinet members used to be close associates of mine.
May I? Perfecto Yasay,
You guess.
Silvestre Bello.
Sani Dominguez, Jess Doresa.
How important do you think is the relationship of the president and the vice president?
They must be seen as a team, not only to the outside world, but to our own people. The vice president, whoever he or she is in any administration, is a person of consequence.
But how do you feel that the incoming president hasn't indicated any position for the incoming vice president? Should he give her a position in the cabinet, you think?
Personally, yes. But officially, I don't know the other aspects of this, no? But let me answer by providing you my own experience. President Joseph Ejercito Estrada belonged to another party. When we met officially after the proclamation, I asked him, what are your choices? Immediately, I was asking him to tell me about what cabinet position he would like to have. He mentioned 2 positions. And I said, I'm sorry, you cannot have those because I already have some professionals in mind. Then I said, let me be the one to suggest. I said, why don't you become President's Commissioner
President's commissioner?
against crime?
What are your thoughts on bringing back the death penalty by hanging?
I was in favor of the death penalty during my time, but the most humane is the lethal injection.
I need to ask you about Miriam, Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Of course, there was this, controversy about you. She claims that she was cheated in the 1992 elections, and that she would have won that election if she wasn't cheated, sir. She has cancer. She was in the ICU. Anything you'd like to tell the senator?
I wish Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago all the best. May she get well and have a long, enjoyable, healthy life thereafter. In regard to the 1992 elections, it's on the record in the Supreme Court that she protested in order to clarify or justify her charges of cheating taking place. They dismissed her protest in 1992 on a technicality.
Marcos burial, sir.
My position has been very clear. Let the people decide. What I mean by that is a congressional joint resolution, because the senators and the congressmen represent the people in this country. And for the late president to be buried as agreed to by the family beside his late mother in the family plot in the cemetery of Batak, Ilocos Norte. And lastly, for him to be given the honors of a major, I think that was his rank in Bataan, which is the usual protocol for military funerals.
You were not amenable to a hero's burial of the former president at the Libigan ng mga Bayani. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, because the agreement was that he would be buried
in Batak.
In Batak. And that agreement is still there.
What about talks with China, sir? Is that something you recommend? Because the president seems to be keen on doing bilateral talks with China.
My view now, after 2 world wars and another one coming up if we do not solve that problem, is that mankind, especially the Philippines, especially China, and especially the U.S., have suffered enough from war.
This is a very unconventional president. What do you think of his leadership style, or what do you think of Rodrigo Duterte?
He must be seen not so much as a cold-blooded official willing to use his firearm to do certain things. He must be seen, first of all, as a trained lawyer and as a successful prosecutor following the rule of law. Secondly, I think it is to the credit of President-elect Duterte, as well as to the nation itself, that for the first time we have a president who comes from Mindanao. And hopefully, from that perspective, from that vantage point, he can solve the problems of poverty better than any of us before him. Because the poorest of the poor are there.
Do you agree with his leadership style?
Not quite. He must act presidential according to our national interest.
He promises, though, somehow, Mr. President, that by June 30, there will be a change in him. What if he doesn't change, sir? What if he remains the way he is, the way people know him to be? Is that bad?
He said on many occasions, there will be a metamorphosis. I think he's seeing himself first as a worm, which is the beginning of something beautiful, meaning a butterfly at the right time. And I'm looking forward to that.
What if it doesn't happen? Does it matter?
Yes, it does matter. Yes, it does matter. It matters to me. Because if you begin as a worm, and if nothing happens, you end up as a worm. And therefore, there is no benefit, there's no progress for the country as a whole. But I don't think it will turn out that way. I'm very optimistic.
You have faith in him?
Yes.
What's the best attribute you think the incoming president has coming into the presidency?
It is his focus on law and order, leading to the elimination of corruption, drug abuse, and organized crime in general. This, however, must be carried out faithfully as a national policy by those below him, because, as I said earlier, any beautiful program or project or policy can be spoiled by the non-performance or the lousy attitudes of lower members of the administration.
So you talked about anti-drugs, anti-corruption, anti-crime. Would this, if he solves these, maybe not to 100%, sir, would that solve half of the country's problems, you think?
Yes, because the best weapon in fighting these evils of our society is for the commander-in-chief leading by example. And we have seen it already in his local government days that he has done this.
Tell us if you agree or disagree with them. He wants a shift to a federal form of government.
I'm all in favor.
Let's hear it.
With one condition. The parliamentary must precede the federalism.
Do you think the Philippines is ready for a federal form of government? Is it time?
Yes. In 91, 92, during my term, we were ready already. We had 16 administrative regions. In the Constitution, 2 of those regions would be autonomous regions. The ARMM was the first one, and the Cordillera was the second one.
So you're in favor of going parliament first, and you're saying federalism will follow?
Naturally.
Naturally, okay.
As the experience of the so many little states in Europe has shown.
Okay. Are you for CON or CONAS?
Let us do the Constituent Assembly where the smaller issues can be done. Like some of the economic issues can all be done by congressional action. But the transformation perhaps to a parliamentary system will have to be done by a CON.
What do you think of the incoming president's plan, or he's actually doing it somehow already, to boycott the media?
I've been watching him since the very beginning. That he was very friendly to media. And however, in these last 2 or 3 encounters that I have seen, and these were past midnight, very long drawn out encounters, and there were some very tricky questions to be handled. And I think that is when he came out with this no more interviews, no more conferences. I think he was just provoked into this kind of an attitude or pronouncement.
So how do you think he should handle media?
The media must be seen as a part of the team. There may be some critical members of media, but that is part of teamwork. So I'm hopeful because I'm not blaming anyone in media, because I think some very tricky questions to entrap him were asked. So it went from bad to worse.
Any advice to the incoming president?
I've given enough already.
What's the most important thing he should remember coming in as president?
Well, I've said it, but I'll repeat it. On day one, you must act and be president.